countries that are revealed in the book of Revelation. Are these locations in Bible prophecy? United States of America, Russia, China. Number 1. The United States of America. What do you think? Do you believe that the United States is in the book of Revelation? Now, if you're looking for a direct and explicit reference, the answer is no. The Bible does not explicitly mention the United States of America. However, there is a nation in the book of Revelation that many believe refers to the United States of America, and this is Babylon. The Old Testament has 15 books about prophecy, but the New Testament has just one, Revelation. John, one of Jesus' apostles, wrote this book while he was in Ephesus. John and Mary, Jesus' mother, lived in Ephesus and were buried there. Revelation was written toward the end of the 1st century. Emperor Domitian then required everyone to burn incense to Caesar once a year on the Lord's Day. People had to stand before an altar, raise their hands and say, "Caesar is Lord." This was a big problem for early Christians because they believed Jesus was Lord. They couldn't say Caesar is Lord without facing harsh punishment. It was essential to see if Christians would stick to their faith. Before this book was written, people were already dying for their beliefs. Revelation was meant to guide those willing to die for their faith. The word martyr originally meant witness. Soon, however, it came to mean someone who died for their faith in Jesus. John wrote the book of Revelation, but it differs from John's Gospel and letters. Here's why. Revelation was specially given to John. God the Father gave it to Jesus. Then Jesus gave it to an angel. The angel then gave it to John, who wrote it down for all the churches. No other book in the Bible was given in such a complex way. John wrote down what he saw and heard. Sometimes what he saw was so impressive that the angel reminded him to write it all down 11 times. During his visions, John was taken up to heaven, where he heard voices and choir singing, and he had to write everything down. Revelation is an amazing book that discusses one big thing: Jesus Christ's return to earth. The Bible mentions this event 318 times, more than any other prediction. Revelation explains what happens before, during, and after Jesus' return. In this book, we also see the fall of Babylon. Chapters 17 and 18 discuss the very end of the world. In the rest of Revelation, there are two main female figures, a dirty prostitute and a clean bride. They aren't real people, but symbols. They stand for cities. You might call it a tale of two cities. The two cities are Babylon and Jerusalem, with Babylon being the city of humans and Jerusalem being the city of God. Let's focus on Babylon first. Revelation chapter 14, verse 8. Then another angel, a second one, followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all nations drink the wine of the passion of her immorality, corrupting them with idolatry." Babylon stands for a significant organized rebellion against God. In prophecy, Babylon can sometimes mean a particular city or a religious or political system. All these are connected to ancient Babylon's evil ways. When we hear that Babylon has led all nations into fornication, it mainly means spiritual fornication, worshiping other gods. But it's no surprise that spiritual fornication often comes with actual immoral behavior. Revelation chapter 16, verses 19 through 21. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And God kept in mind Babylon the Great, to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce and furious wrath. Then every island fled away, and no mountains could be found. And giant hailstones, as heavy as a talent, fell from the sky on the people. And people reviled and spoke abusively of God for the plague of the hail, because the plague was so very great. In the Bible, cities are often shown as wrong places. The first mention of cities, which is essential, ties them to Lamech and the making of dangerous weapons. Cities draw in people, including those who do wrong, often encouraging bad behavior. Where there is less community and more hiding, sins and crimes grow. In this part of the Bible, greed and pride are the main sins discussed, and both are linked to loving money. You can't serve both God and money at the same time. Luke chapter 16, verse 13. No servant can be the slave of two masters. Such a servant will hate one and love the other, or will be loyal to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. In a prosperous city, people can easily forget that God made everything in heaven and on earth. Sometimes people start to worship their skills and talents. Tall buildings often show off human pride and achievements, indicating arrogance. An excellent example is the Babel Tower near the Euphrates River on the path between Asia, Africa, and Europe. Nimrod, a great hunter and warrior, built it. He believed that power means you are right, and only the most vital people survive. The tower was meant to be the tallest building ever made by humans. It was a way for people to show off and say, "Look at what we can do." They wanted to make a name for ourselves. The most significant danger to Jerusalem was Babylon. In the end, Nebuchadnezzar came and wrecked the holy city, including its temple, and took its riches. He sent the people away into exile for 70 years. God let this happen because the people had made Jerusalem just like any other city, not special anymore. The evil entity of Babylon. An angel invites John to witness the judgment of this evil woman. Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 2. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here. I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of sexual immorality. And those who live on the earth became drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality." The unfortunate truth is that it will not end well for Babylon. We already read here of a judgment from God. This is not a small thing. It was always a great calamity for anyone, let alone any city, to come under God's judgment. The fate of Babylon will end just like the fate of Babel did. The great accomplishment of man will receive her due judgment. The name Babylon is vital in the Bible. It stands for religious unfaithfulness and corruption. Babylon represents a false religion that leads people away from worshiping God correctly, showing spiritual cheating and moral decay. This is shown in the book of Revelation, where Babylon is described as a mysterious woman having wrong relationships with the kings of the earth. This highlights the moral decline and corruption of societies caught up in false religions. Revelation chapter 17, verses 3 through 6. And the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was entirely covered with blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold, precious stones and pearls, and she was holding in her hand a gold cup, full of the abominations and the filth of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes, false religions, heresies, and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, God's people, and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus, who were martyred. When I saw her, I wondered in amazement. Prosperity, showiness, and luxury can make us proud and greedy, but they can protect us from God's punishment. The golden cup stands for the temptations and tricks used by this wicked Babylon to gain and keep her power, and to lead others into her terrible ways. This place is known for its awful actions, because it teaches people to worship false gods and do all kinds of evil. It is full of the blood of Jesus' followers and martyrs. She became drunk on it, enjoying it so much that she was never satisfied. It's shocking to think about how much Christian blood has been spilled by people who call themselves Christians. When we look at these prophecies, we see that these terrible events prove the gospel's truth. We should be careful not to be fooled by flashy, profitable, or trendy religions. Instead, let's stay away from the secrets of evil and focus on understanding the true meaning of godliness. By doing this, we can learn humility and thankfulness from Christ's example. The more we try to be like Him, the less likely we will be tricked by false teachers. And he shouted with a mighty voice, saying, "Fallen, fallen, certainly to be destroyed, is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a dungeon haunted by every unclean spirit, and a prison for every unclean and loathsome bird. For all the nations have drunk from the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings and political leaders of the earth have committed immorality with her. And the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth and economic power of her sensuous luxury. Repay to her even as she has repaid others, and pay back to her double her torment in accordance with what she has done. In the cup of sin and suffering which she mix a double portion of perfect justice for her. To the degree that she glorified herself and reveled and gloated in her sensuality, living deliciously and luxuriously, to that same degree impose on her torment and anguish, and mourning and grief. For in her heart she boasts, "I sit as a queen on a throne, and I am not a widow, and will never ever see mourning or experience grief." For this reason, in a single day her plagues, afflictions, calamities will come, pestilence and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire and completely consumed. For strong and powerful is the Lord God who judges her. Revelation chapter 18, verses 6 through 8. God has already decided that mystical Babylon will fall and be destroyed. An angel comes from heaven, and this angel might be Jesus himself. He is coming to defeat his enemies and share his gospel with all the nations. Babylon's wickedness was very great. It had turned away from the true God, set up false idols, and led many people into spiritual wrongdoing. Babylon used its wealth and luxury to keep people interested and trapped. This spiritual merchandise, which many use to become rich through sinful ways, is a big problem. There is a clear warning for anyone who hopes for God's mercy. They must not only leave Babylon, but also help in its destruction. God might still have some people in Babylon, but they will be called out. Those who join in the sins of Babylon will face their punishments. And the kings and political leaders of the earth who committed immorality and lived luxuriously with her will weep and beat their chests in mourning over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing a long way off in fear of her torment, saying, "Woe, Woe, the great city, the strong city Babylon! In a single hour your judgment has come. And merchants of the earth will weep and grieve over her, because no one buys their cargo, goods, merchandise anymore. Cargoes of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls, and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet. All kinds of citron, scented wood, and every article of ivory, and every article of very costly and lavish wood and bronze and iron and marble, and cinnamon and spices and incense and perfume, and frankincense and wine and olive oil and fine flour and wheat, of cattle and sheep, and cargoes of horses and chariots and carriages, and of slaves and human lives. The ripe fruits and delicacies of your soul's desire have gone from you, and all things that were luxurious and extravagant are lost to you, never again to be found. The merchants who handled these articles, who grew wealthy from their business with her, will stand a long way off in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud, saying, Woe, woe! For the great city that was robed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, gilded and adorned with gold, with precious stones and with pearls, because in 1 hour all the vast wealth has been laid waste. And every ship captain or navigator, and every passenger and sailor, and all who make their living by the sea stood a long way off, and exclaimed as they watched the smoke of her burning, saying, What could be compared to the great city? And they threw dust on their heads and were crying out, weeping and mourning, saying, Woe, woe for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich from her great wealth, because in 1 hour she has been laid waste. Revelation chapter 18, verses 9 through 19. The people who cried over Babylon had enjoyed her pleasures and made money from her trade. They had praised the world's kings, leading them into idol worship, which let those kings mistreat their people while still following Babylon. Now, the merchants who sold her luxuries, forgave her sins and gave her honors, are sad. Babylon's friends joined in her sinful ways and profits, but didn't want to face her troubles. The spirit of the Antichrist is all about worldly things, and the sadness is just about losing these worldly comforts. People don't grieve over God's anger, but over their lost luxuries. The wealth and splendor of the ungodly won't help them, and will only worsen their punishment. Here, the focus is on how, not just enslaved people, but also people's souls are treated as goods, leading to the loss of millions of souls. Wealthy traders should learn that gaining Christ's hidden riches is far better. Otherwise, they might end up sad, because their wealth will eventually disappear, and everything they want will be gone. When they die, their riches won't help them. They'll face not just a coffin and decay, but also an unquenchable fire. What brings joy to God's servants on earth also brings joy to the angels in heaven. The apostles will rejoice in the fall of Babylon. The fall of Babylon was a result of God's justice, and because it was a final ruin, this enemy will never trouble them again, as a sign assured them. Let's learn from the mistakes that led others to destruction and focus on heavenly things, considering the changing nature of earthly things. Is the United States really Babylon? Will angels celebrate the downfall of this once great nation? Does the characteristics of Babylon truly match that of America? Whether the U.S. is like Babylon or not, it will be one of the all nations that God will judge. Isaiah chapter 34, verses 2 through 3. For the Lord is angry at all the nations, and his wrath is against all their armies. He has utterly doomed them. He has given them over to slaughter. So their slain will be thrown out, and the stench of their corpses will rise, and the mountains will flow with their blood. The United States will be one of all nations that come to Zion to worship the true King. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2. Now it will come to pass that in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be firmly established as the highest of the mountains, and will be exalted above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. Babylon the Great is shown as the biggest player in the world at the end times. This is obvious, due to the amount of times that it is mentioned in this prophetic book. Because of this, it should be clear for anyone living in the last days to know who Babylon the Great is. But right now, people who believe in different end times theories are split on understanding these chapters. The unity of Revelation chapter 17 and chapter 18. Let's look at Revelation chapter 17 and chapter 18 together. These chapters are talking about the same thing, which is a political power. In Revelation chapter 17 verse 18, it clearly says that the prostitute is the big city mentioned in Revelation chapter 18. This city isn't just about religion, it's a political power. Babylon the Great is like a superpower that controls politics, money, and culture in the end times. So, which country today do you think controls politics, money, and culture the most? It can be obvious why many can see the West as being Babylon. However, some people also believe that Babylon exists elsewhere, such as the Middle East. A look at Revelation chapter 17 verses 1 through chapter 19 verse 4 tells us that Babylon the Great is the biggest power in the world during the end times. Here's what we learn from this part of the book of Revelation. First, Babylon the Great has the biggest economy of any place in the world. It's where the most money is made and controls global wealth during the end times. Second, Babylon the Great influences world culture in a way that goes against Christian values. Third, Babylon the Great will have the most political power of any group in the end times. Fourth, Babylon the Great is thought to have the strongest military in the end times. These things can only happen once, and the United States is doing them right now. No other country in history has ever controlled all the different countries like this. The United States is in a unique position where it has more power sources than anyone else in the world. In the book of Revelation, Babylon the Great is shown as the most potent force in the end times. It's so powerful that it influences the world's culture and economy. This kind of power has only ever been seen once in history, and it is clear that the United States has this power. Although some parts of the prophecy are still to come true, especially the parts about Babylon the Great trying to kill Christians around the world, there are enough details that match up now to be sure the rest will happen too.